Hello, hello! Hope your Wednesday is off to a really good start. Today I am bringing you another episode of Resources of the Medway Valley. Now, in one of the earlier videos, Katie talked about some of just the birds you can find in the area. It wasn't anything super specific. It was songbirds, and I think geese were thrown in there. So if you would like to learn more about those types of birds, feel free to go check that video out. Now today, we are going to specifically be talking about owls, because owls are pretty interesting in themselves. Now, owls are like other birds of prey, and they're pretty much the best pest control in the bird world. So that means instead of eating insects and seeds, birds of prey, they go after small mammals, or some larger mammals, different things like that, whatever they can take down. So before we jump right into the three types of owls I'm going to mention that you could possibly find in the Medway Valley and in general the London area, we're going to talk a little bit about like general facts about owls, because it's pretty much the same for almost all of them. So the first thing, owls actually have asymmetrical ears, which means that instead of us where our ears are on either side of our head, one ear is higher than the other ear. So if you hold that like that, that's how the owl's ears looks. If you look under their feathers, they kind of just look like holes. Now that just lets them know where a sound is coming from. Is it coming from above? Is it a predator that might be coming after them? Or is it food? So they're able to exactly distinguish where a sound is coming from. Now, owls, instead of having round eyes like us, their eyes are tube-shaped, which is really weird to kind of like imagine, but it's like a cylinder. So one of those long, like a can of beans or something like that. Not as wide. And they're also immobile, so where we can look left and right and up and down without really moving our heads, they can't do that. So because they can't move their eyes, as you probably know, owls are really well known for swiveling their head almost all the way around. And I say almost because they can't quite make a 360-degree circle. If you picture a clock and an owl starting at 12 o'clock, an owl can swivel its head all the way to the 9 position. That's 270 degrees total, and here's a picture of that. Now, they also have specialized flight feathers on their wings. So that gives them the ability to fly silently. So if you hear like a hawk take off, you can usually hear them flapping their wings. Owls, their feathers are so soft and delicate and quiet that you cannot hear them take off. Absolutely silent. So that's really good for hunting animals that can hear really well, like mice. Now, on to what they eat a little bit. Owls, like I said, we're going to discuss a variety of what they eat, because they do have very wide-ranging diets, depending on their size. But what usually occurs, if they eat something smaller, like a mouse or a mole or a vole or something like that, they will swallow it whole, and then they will, I'm trying to think of a good word to say. They'll produce something called an owl pellet. So they kind of spit it back up. It's all the things that they can't digest, so things like fur, bones, and other undigestible parts. And so, I don't know about you guys, but I've actually had experience where during a summer camp of mine, we actually got to open them up. And they're sterilized, they're clean, but you can look and see what an owl actually ate, and make sure it's not eating anything bad, and make sure it's having a healthy diet. Another thing, females are pretty much always larger than males, and that's just about with any species of owl. So I'm not going to say that for every single one, and their specific sizes, but just know, females are always larger. So if you see two owls, and it's a male and a female, the bigger one, that's the female. And then just a quick fun fact, a group of owls, as we know, owls are usually associated with wisdom, and a group of owls is called a parliament. So if you ever see a whole bunch, which is usually not the case, but if you see a bunch of owls in a tree somewhere, it's called a parliament of owls. Alright, all that being said, our first owl is the great horned owl. Now you have probably seen a picture of these owls before. They're one of the most common and recognizable birds of prey, and they're found pretty much anywhere. They really need forested and semi-forested areas, so I've actually heard them in my backyard here before. I heard two hooting back and forth, and they're found from North, Central, and South America. They're typically brown, as you saw in the picture, or grayish brown, but they can range in colors. pretty much, camouflage. They can hide in different habitats. They have those big yellow eyes, which, again, pretty recognizable. And then, why they're called the great horned owls, they don't have horns, but they have those tufts of feathers on their head. So that's why we call them great horned owls. They're pretty large. They have a wingspan of 1.2 meters, and these are your typical night owls. They hunt between dusk and dawn, so they like it when it's dark out. And most owls are usually like that. They are also the ones that make that typical hoot noise. So if you make an owl noise right now, that's going to be the one that you're going to try to mimic. It's going to be that hoo hoo hoo. And as far as what these guys hunt, they'll go for anything. They'll hunt mice, they'll hunt rabbits. There's even some cases where they're on the losing side of a skunk, where they'll come out of it smelling pretty bad, and also in some cases on the losing side of porcupines, because if they can flip them over, that's how they can get the porcupine. But other times they're found with the needle stuck in them, and either they need some help with that, or they unfortunately don't make it. Now, as far as a threat goes, they're not endangered because they're so unbothered by human activity. I mean, as far as, they're in my own backyard in my neighborhood, they don't really mind it. The only big risk that they do run into is that they risk hitting power lines, so they might get electrocuted, or they're getting struck by cars or getting tangled in objects such as soccer nets, different things like that, and if somebody doesn't find them soon enough, then unfortunately they won't make it. But otherwise, they're pretty hardy animals. Our next owl, our next little guy we're going to talk about is the eastern screech owl. So these guys are one of the smallest owls in North America. In fact, they're only found in the Americas. You can find them, again, pretty much anywhere, and especially more so than the great horned owls. You can find them in city parks, in suburbs, in wooded areas. Pretty much anywhere. If there's a tree, they'll be there. And what's kind of neat is they roost in cavities, so the holes that woodpeckers drill out of a trunk of a tree. And so that's where they'll have their nest, and they'll sleep in there. So that's typically where you'll find them. Again, they become active at dusk to dawn. That's when they hunt. And just to give you an idea of how big they are, they're about the size of a robin. So robins are pretty small birds, so are these guys. They're also the only small owl with tufts in North America, though they won't always show them. They are there. They usually just have little rounded heads, but they'll pop them up if they either hear something or they're a little threatened by an animal or a person. Just make them look a little bigger. Now, when they call them screech owls, it's a little misleading. They don't really screech how you'd imagine it. They make a whistling, trilling noise, almost like a horror movie sound. And I mean, it's kind of hard to replicate, but it's like a noise, so it kind of trills downward. Kind of spooky sounding if you're outside, and I have heard them before, and you're kind of looking both ways like, what was that? Now, as far as what these guys eat, really just small mammals. They eat mice, they'll eat large insects, and they'll also go for songbirds if they can find them. A little bit harder at nighttime. A threat to these guys, less so of the man-made objects, more so of actually other owls. That's pretty much what goes after them. Their small size makes them really easy targets. So unfortunately, a great horned owl might really find a tasty treat in a screech owl, though I wouldn't want to see that. Now our final owl is our snowy owl. Now these guys, if you've seen Harry Potter, you know what a snowy owl looks like. They're very popular, especially because of that, because of Hedwig. Now you can find these guys, of course it has to be cold for them. They breed on the islands of the Arctic archipelago, so really, really far up in the northern areas. And then they're also found on the northern coast of the continent, from the Yukon Territory to Labrador, is where you can find them. So in the winter time, though, when it's really cold up there, they have a bit of a larger range, so they'll actually travel to the prairies of western Canada and in unforested parts of southern Ontario and Quebec, so that you can find them there. There's been cases they find them on runways where the planes are and different things like that, and they have to remove them. And they do track them as well. And they occasionally come down as far south as the northern portions of the U.S., which is typically really rare because it doesn't get quite as cold as they like it in the wintertime. Now, these are one of the largest owls in North America. They have a wingspan of 1.5 meters and are actually the heaviest owls in North America as well. There is a bit of a different color between the two. The males are almost pure white, and the females have the distinct bars of dark brown. They kind of look black too. So Hedwig is a girl owl because of that. They also have a thick layer of down feathers. So that's the really soft, fluffy feathers that's underneath of their normal feathers. And that keeps them really warm because where they live, the temperatures can reach as low as minus 50 degrees Celsius. Typically, these owls are pretty quiet, where you have your hoot owls and the great horned owls, and you have the screechy owls and the screech owls. They don't really make a whole lot of noise, but if there are people around and they feel threatened, they will hiss, they'll scream, or they'll snap their bills, so you'll hear like a clapping noise. And that's pretty much if they're threatened. As far as food, again, they eat small mammals, but they'll go after larger prey if they find it. The rule is, though, they need about 7 to 12 mice to meet its food requirements. So in order to maintain their energy, in order to stay warm, that's how many little mice they have to eat. And finally, like great horned owls, the only really threat to them is man-made structures are the greatest threat. So power lines, wire fences, cars, things like that. And also just because of global warming, they are facing a reduced territory range. So they're kind of getting pushed around, getting pushed farther north and not coming as far south. Now that's pretty much it as far as our owl friends go. So we are going to, as usual, head inside and do a quick little craft today. So I'm going to say you might need to get some toilet paper rolls. Preferably without the toilet paper on them. I'll see you inside. Alright, so for our craft, we are going to turn our toilet paper tube, and you can kind of see on the inside, that's what it is, into a little owl friend. So, I made a little great horned owl this time. He can sit on your desk, he can keep you company while you're doing some schoolwork. If you're even still doing schoolwork, I think it's officially summer right now. But you can keep him on your desk, he can guard your pencils, make sure no mice steal them. So let's have a look at all of the materials we need to make this little guy. So everything we are going to need for our little owl friend is some different colored construction paper. If not, we can improvise, we can use paints and different things like that to make different shades of brown. So I have dark brown construction paper. I didn't have any light brown construction paper for the belly and the eyes. So I just used some lighter brown paint and painted on the shapes. And then I have yellow for the feet, beak, and the actual eyes themselves. You can use orange construction paper if you have that. You're going to need some glue, so I'm going to use some hot glue and probably also some white craft glue as well, just so that sticks really well. And then scissors just to cut stuff out, Sharpie so you can draw some designs on it like the pupils for the eyes, and then also the pencil just because I figured we can probably freehand most of this stuff. We don't really need a template for it because as I'll go along, like the eye piece here is pretty much like a peanut shape, and this is just, the belly's just a U. The wing, you can make it look however you want to, if you want to make it get ridges or spikes or anything feathery. So I just figured we could pretty much just draw those without too much help. Alright, so let me make some space here. Alright, so for the first thing, and I already tried to glue this on once, but I messed up. But we have to be careful, that's alright, if we're using hot glue especially. You just need a piece of dark brown construction paper that is as close to the actual width of the toilet paper tube. As you can see there, it's pretty much almost exact. And we're going to roll that. So I'm going to take my hot glue, see if I can do this correctly this time. It's easier once you get it started. So I think it'll be easier if I line it up and then roll it. Look at that, perfect. And if you choose to use hot glue, I would just say make sure you have some adult supervision. If you're an adult, feel free to have some supervision as well, because I know I make a mess with hot glue. Alright, there we go. So hopefully that'll stick on really well. And we're going to need a little bit more to make sure it sticks. So for example, I'm going to put some right here. And continue to roll it. And just be careful, because the heat does go through the paper. I don't want anybody ending up with burned fingers. And then one more back around where we first started rolling it. Just like that. And you can see we have some extra, and since we don't want that really hanging off of our little owl, and I personally don't really want to double it up, I'm just going to trim that as close as you can get. Doesn't have to be perfect. So there you are. We have our covered toilet paper roll. Now we want to keep that little seam area towards the back because we don't really want people to see that part. But what we're going to do is we're going to fold the front and the back down and really crease it. You don't really have to glue it if you don't want to. I don't really think I'm going to bother with that personally. If you want to, you can probably just overlap those just a tiny bit. But just like that. And see if you can guess what kind of owl I'm making. We're going to have 2 little ears for our owl, just like that. And like I said, if you want to glue that, I'm not going to really worry about it. I don't think anybody really should be looking at the top of our owl because we're going to be looking at it just like that. Alright. Now for the wing, you can see how I drew mine on. We want to give it 2 straight lines at the top because we're going to fold it so that it looks like he has his wings out, like he's ready to take flight. And then I just drew a curvy line and then a couple little bumps to connect those 2 lines together. So I'm going to first, in order to get 2 symmetrical wings, I'm going to fold that in half. And then all we have to do is snip, and we're going to end up with 2 wings. And then don't forget that straight line. Boop. Right at the top there. And then just like that, we have 2 wings. Alright, next up is the belly. And then these little eye pieces. And again, when you're drawing this, if you kind of just draw a little 8 shape without the holes in the middle, that's pretty much all it is. Just like that. Turn around so you don't see the whites. Just like that. Alright, and then for our little yellow pieces. So same thing with the eyes. I'm going to fold that in half. And what's handy with this then is that you don't have to draw 2 separate ones, you can just draw 1. And then you end up with 2 eyes like that. And then, oh, I did, hold on. Almost forgot to do it for the feet. Same thing with the feet, owls have 2 feet. These are probably the trickiest ones to cut out. But these also have straight lines too, so that you can fold those. Oh, perfect. And then the beak is just a little triangle. Easy to cut out. Boop. And snip. Alright. Now this is where our regular glue is probably going to come in handy. Again, if you have lighter paper than this, I'm thinking the white glue will just be really good. But for speed and efficiency's sake, I am going to be using the hot glue. So see how I can fold that little flappy in there. And I'm just going to grab my little owl, make sure the seam is facing towards the back, and there's 1 wing, and then that just sticks right on. And again, if you just want to be patient, which is certainly a good thing to be able to do, is to use some white glue, and then you can use a paper clip to hold it in place until it dries. So try to get that so he's not, oopsies. Like an owl's ears, they're not going to be one higher than the other, right? Alright, now for the tummy, I want to give him some feathers, so I'm just, going to draw some wavy lines. There we go. Now the only bad thing about hot glue is, A, you tend to run out. There we go. And I'm just doing that mostly too because A, I'm running out, and B, it leaves ridges behind. Let's show you guys that. So you want to keep the flat part of that U shape towards the bottom. And that'll stick on. And like I said, if you want to use like a paper clip or something to hold it in place, one here, so that it gets a nice secure fit like that. And then you can take them off, and then your owl will be all good. Now for our little eyes here, same situation, bit of glue. Just like that. Make sure you guys can see this. And just make sure those are dry. And then you can draw little pupils on there, like that. Looks a little spooky. And glue those on. So if you guessed that this is a great horned owl, give yourself a pat on the back. You guys are right. Beak on. And then for the feet, oh my goodness. I tore a little bit into my, it's a very aggressive paper clip. That's okay. For the feet, you're going to do the same thing you did with your wings. Fold the little leggies up like that. And then they're just going to go on the inside bottom part here. And you're going to put glue on the top part. And just stick those under. And then fold them up. So it looks like he has, oh my goodness. Again, this is a little easier if I'm trying to rush it. Hopefully everything will dry. I don't want his eyes falling off. That would be good. So our little owl needs to be able to see. Is our little great horned owl desk buddy. So I think I might keep him on my desk. He can keep me company when I'm working on some stuff. But he's so cute. And you can probably make a little eastern screech owl with that. And you can also make a snowy owl. I mean, they don't really have the tufts on their ears, but you can use your imagination. Alright, hope you guys have some fun with that. Alright, so hopefully you ended up with a cute little owl pal, but just like that. You can sit on my desk. Off to the side there. Now, if you're interested in learning more about owls, specifically snowy owls, there's a pretty cool website called Project Snowstorm, where they put a little transmitter, a little tracker on an owl's back. Doesn't hurt them, it just attaches to their back. And it shows where the owl goes, basically. So if they find one in Quebec, they're able to see, oh, does it go to Ontario and then north, or does it go to the Yukon Territory, Labrador, any of those places. So they just see where they're going and where they're at, make sure the numbers are still stable. So just things like that. If you're interested, again, Project Snowstorm. They even name them. That's pretty cute. Now for the rest of the week, tomorrow at 1 p.m. we'll have another hashtag MOA Live Talk with Heather. So definitely check that out at 1 p.m. And then on Friday, we're going to have our usual Mad Lib session with Katie at 10 a.m. So again, check it out. Always a good time. And I'll hopefully see you guys next week.